Peru is one of the larger South American countries and is about 10 times the size of England and covers an area of 1,285,000 square kilometers and has a population of over 26 million. Around 70% of its inhabitants live in cities, which are mainly located along the coast and limited almost exclusively to half a dozen thin but relatively fertile river valleys running into the Pacific. Peru is unique in possessing such a wide variety of ecosystems ranging from the driest hot desert in the Americas, to the high Andean peaks, over 7,600 meters above sea level, from a 2,000-kilometer-long belt of cloud forest, rich in flora and fauna, to a vast area of lowland Amazon jungle, covering about half the country. The three main zones of Peru are known as La Costa, the coast, La Sierra, the mountains, and La Selva, the jungle. Within a matter of hours, you can leave the scorching desert coastline with some of the Pacific Ocean's best fishing, cross the world's highest tropical mountain range, the Andes, and plunge down into our planet's biggest tropical rainforest. The unusual weather conditions in Peru are created mainly by two major offshore ocean currents, the cold Humboldt current coming up from Chile and the Antarctic, which meets the warm, tropical El Niño current coming down from the Pacific along the Ecuadorian coast. The Humboldt is largely responsible for the dry desert coastline of Peru and northern Chile, sending Pacific clouds up into the Andes where they precipitate as rain. Traditional Peruvian wisdom says that it only really rains on the Peruvian coast about once every 20 years or so, when the El Niño current pushes further down the coast, warming the seas and causing disruptive rains in the desert. These rains bring devastating floods to towns and settlements poorly prepared for torrential downpours and often inhabited by migrants from the mountains. However, the rains also bring the desert into bloom as all the wildflower seeds, preserved by the drought conditions, suddenly burst into life. Over the last few years, the Peruvian weather has been rather unsettled and El Niño has been acting even more unpredictably than usual, possibly as a result of global warming. However, it still rarely rains on the coast, although the Lima region does experience substantial smog, coastal fogs or mists and even drizzle, particularly between the months of May and November. Peru is situated along the boundary of two tectonic plates, the Nazca Plate and the South American Plate. The interface between these two plates is located near the Peruvian coast. At a rate of about 60 millimeters per year, the South American Plate is moving towards the Pacific Ocean over the Nazca Plate. The Peruvian economy is historically based on the country's geographical conditions. The different climate zones facilitate widespread agriculture. The Andes, rich in natural resources, allow mining, and the Pacific Ocean with its fish-full waters makes commercial fishing possible. Already the Incas used the existing resources wisely and skillfully. They built a vast empire without the need for markets and money, just with a system based on trade and service. With the Spanish conquest of Latin America in the 16th century, the Incan social and economic structures were eliminated. Interested mostly in the rich natural resources, the Spaniards exploited the country, making the Spanish noblesse within Peru and back home rich, while the indigenous population was forced to slave labor. The 19th century in Peru is marked by wars and destruction. While Peru's independence was already declared in 1821, fighting continued until the last Spanish conquerors were defeated in 1924. After the war, political turmoil, including a war with Colombia in 1828, 1829, with Chile from 1836 to 1839, and finally the War of the Pacific with Chile from 1879 to 1884, which Peru all lost, continued crippling the country's economy. After the war, the government started to initiate a number of economic reforms. Just when Peru slowly recovered, falling export prices and the Great Depression in the 1930s set the country back once again. From the late 1940s, Peru was governed by military juntas. After 30 years of economic mismanagement, Peru lay in ruins. In 1980, the country returned to democracy, but experienced next to severe economic problems, high inflation and terrorism. President Alberto Fujimori's election in 1990 introduced a decade with a dramatic turnaround in the economy and significant progress in curtailing guerrilla activity. Nevertheless, the president's increasing reliance on authoritarian measures generated in the late 1990s increasing dissatisfaction with his regime, which led to his dismissal in 2000. In 2001, Alejandro Toledo was elected as president. The Toledo government successfully consolidated Peru's return to democracy. His strong economic management and promotion of foreign investments led to an impressive economic boom in the country, which laid the foundation of Peru's present success. Inflation nearly disappeared. The presidential election of 2006 saw the return of Alan Garcia, who, after a disappointing presidential term from 1985 to 1990, returned to the presidency. While many in Peru and abroad had strong doubts at the beginning of Garcia's presidency, they were surprised later. Garcia managed to embrace free markets and free trade, making Peru one of Latin America's top destinations for foreign investment. Despite the global economic and financial crisis, foreign investment in Peru increased. The economic status of the country improved, public debt dropped and foreign reserves went up. As of 2011, Peru is one of the world's fastest growing economies. Although more and more Peruvians benefit from the continuous growth, inequality persists and the distribution of the country's growing wealth to all Peruvians seems difficult. Especially the poor infrastructure in Peru's provinces not only obstructs more investment in these areas but as well efforts to spread the growth. Additionally, political disputes and protests against foreign investors may impede development of some projects related to natural resource extraction exactly in these regions. To consolidate Peruvian exports and imports to and from its most important markets, Peru has negotiated several trade agreements in the last few years. In 2009, for example, free trade agreements with the United States and in 2010 with China, Peru's major trading partners, became effective. From 2009 to 2011, additional free trade agreements with Chile, Canada, Singapore, South Korea, Switzerland, Mexico, Japan and Panama came into force. An agreement with the European was signed in 2011.